We know that our alternative building panel is very important to the Energy Fair. It's been there from the beginning. Oh, we got one behind stage. Tree Fork took it off. Okay, so we prepared for these guys inadvertently because the ice bath created a mud bath. And so we threw down some straw. If anybody feels like they want to start a build up here, you can always do that, right? So what we've got here is we want to welcome back our alternative building panel. And we've got a mix of builders, and it's going to be hosted by Adam. Thank you. And we've got a mix of builders, an architect thrown in, a bunch of folks up here. They all got a lot of experience to share. And I would love for you guys to give them a great round of applause for our alternative building panel.
Hello, hello.
Are you on?
How's everybody today? Good, beautiful Colorado day. So this is the alternative building panel. Get started here. We're gonna have each one of these guys. We'll have each one of these guys have an introduction of themselves. I'm Adam Fries. My company's Sun Peak Builders. I'm a local builder here, and I've built in a number of different used a number of different alternative building materials over the years. And anyway, so our aim is to have a lively panel here. So I will let these guys do an introduction of themselves. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, is it? Oh, yeah. There I am. I can hear me. What a beautiful day. I hope some of you took part of the hail dance last night. That was pretty awesome. So I'm an architect. My firm is Architectural Harmonics. I've been doing architecture in Crestone since the early 80s, and I have experience with most alternative building modalities. I have my favorites and some not so, but I'm not here really to talk about that. We have a lot of hands-on involved. I'm the architect. These guys are the builders. But what I'm here to talk about is another level of alternative and sustainability. And I'm going to give you a little invocation. Bear with me. The land speaks in pattern and abundance, the voice of the Sacred Mother. The awakened mind listens and moves in concert to create sanctuary for the soul. Anyway, as a backdrop, once upon a time I was going through a great deliberation whether to specialize in sustainable building and architecture, or because I studied sacred architecture right here in Crestone many years back extensively, whether to specialize in sacred or sustainable. And the realization that occurred to me is you really can't do either effectively without doing both. You can't build a sustainable building without respecting the sanctity of nature. Just talk. Oh, it's so much easier. And likewise, you can't build a sacred space without respecting that same sanctity of sacred order. And so I call what I practice biome design, which is designing yourself into the biome. I hope you all know the meaning of that word. It's like we're in a particular biome here, and there are certain things that are appropriate and certain things that don't fit, and you don't try to fit the inappropriate, but take advantage of all that is available. And we have a plethora of choices of beautiful building materials, earthen materials, rammed earth, adobe, rock. We've got timber. straw bales. My favorite, pumicecrete. Not a lot of representation of it, but still, it's beautiful stuff. Hempcrete, up and coming, figuring out how to do that right. All of these things are part of the conversation of sustainability, where we're not chopping down forests to make little 2x4s to build fire non-fireproof buildings. Okay, so anyway, my whole premise is that whatever we build, do it in a sacred fashion, whether it's a temple or your own home. Put your soul into it.
Yeah. Hi guys, my name is Ron Chiarello. I'm kind of been always known as an earthshipper. So we're up here from Taos. I've been doing it for 20 years now. Built a lot of earthships all over the planet, every shape and size you can imagine. Something's changed in the last couple years. I don't know if it's just my body is, running out of the enthusiasm of pounding tires. Maybe I'm just starting to get to the realization that, people, are really not looking to destroy themselves, pounding tires all day in the heat. So, and then everything over the last several years with, financing and expensive building materials, challenges in getting anyone to come to work. I can always count on me, myself, and I, but that's getting tiring too. So a number of years ago, I thought, what can I do in the next 20 years of my life where there's something left of me to retire and enjoy what I've worked so hard to do? And I've met some really interesting people here. We've got a booth over there built outside the box. My wife's education business and her business partner's here today as well. And, I've been debating whether or not to just get out of construction and just get into education. And then I wake up and I'm like, no, man, I still got a lot in the tank. I still want to contribute. I still want to have an impact, even though I'm getting to 60 now. But I figured out something that I'm going to be experimenting with. I'm already doing it. I bought a tire baler. Yeah, and I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited about it. It is the one thing that I'm still very excited about. I look at all the different building methods, building techniques. We've traveled to every country on the planet, experimented with everything you can dream of. And I just came back to this place in my life where, I realize it's hard to get help. I realize how expensive building materials are, how limited those resources are. The one thing that is in abundance is the 300 million tires that are disposed of in this country every single year, the 1.5 billion tires that are produced every year on this planet. I figured out, if I'm going to leave my mark on this, in this world for my family, my kids, my grandchildren, all that, I'm going to have to figure out how to build affordable, sustainable, starting off with small, tiny tire bale homes. I'm working with Veterans Off Grid in Taos to build housing for homeless military veterans. Currently, we have about 2 million in the United States. I've worked with landfills on trying to figure out better ways to handle that issue. Never been thrilled with the way we do it now. We're spending a lot of money on equipment, grinding them up. We are trying to recycle things a little bit more. But I think, and I met with somebody here that's actually doing a tire bale build, and I want to actually bring the baler up, come up to, she's not in Crestone, she's close by, and actually start to produce some content so people can get the confidence that not only are you doing something amazing for the environment each and every day. To give you an example, me and my 2 crew guys can make 4 bales an hour. That's 400 tires that are taken out of a landfill. That's 50% of what we typically pound to build the whole building. So a small tire bale home is going to use approximately 6,000 tires. The problem we're going to have is we're not going to have the ability to get that many tires brought in. So it's a really awesome problem to have, is to figure out a way to run out of that byproduct, run out of that toxic material. And we have the ability to add more tire balers as long as we can get the municipality on board and not write us tickets for hauling hazmat materials over the road, or even our community members to deliver them to us. I think once we break down that barrier, I think you guys are going to see some pretty amazing, very aggressive, affordable houses being built. So hopefully when I see you guys maybe next year, I'll actually have a little more to talk about with what we've accomplished. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ron. Can you guys hear this? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kirsten Jacobson, and I first started my natural alternative building journey when I was going to a small private school in San Francisco that was very activist-based, and everything they did, whether it was art or literature or law even, was about social change. And so at that time in my life, I spent a lot of time in little cafes, smoking cigarettes, wearing black, wanting to overthrow the dominant paradigm. And I'm like, so we just have to, overthrow all of capitalism? Great, I'm on it. And then I found out about alternative building from a friend who had come out to Taos and worked with the Earthships, and then she gave me a book and a New York Times article about the project out there. And this is more than 30 years ago. And I went out, and I didn't know what to expect. I was fascinated with the idea of people creating their own autonomous power, and was that a way to create your own political power? I was just kind of coming at it more from a societal lens, but then someone put a blob of Adobe mud in my hands, and I immediately connected. I was like, I love this. I think because my mom let me finger paint with chocolate pudding when I was a kid, I felt right at home, and I began to experience physically seeing the results of my work every day to change the world. And it was small in the beginning because my capabilities were small and I couldn't produce that much work. But every day, at the end of the day, I could walk away and say, this is what I did to, in my way, make the world a better place. And so eventually I decided to build my own house. I started with a 120 square foot dome that I lived in that had one solar panel, an outhouse, no running water. Lived in that through winters in Taos, which was pretty intense, and slowly added on to and built my own Earthship and did that. That took about 8 years to do that. So, and in the meanwhile, I was working and teaching other people and building around the world and leading different programs. And yeah, that's my main thing now is education. I'm no longer with Earthships. I have a company called Build Outside the Box. We have an orange tent over there, and we're focused on helping people decide what alternative natural building systems are best for them, best for their climate, best for their skill level, best for their budget, for their permitting situation, and for their own personal design aesthetics. So taken what I've learned and learned more, met a lot of amazing builders, and we have a network around the world now. And I just really want to inspire people and help get them on their journey to build self-sufficiently. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brett Buchanan. I'm the owner of Crescent Moon Construction, based here in the Valley, or mostly in Swatch County. And I have been a traditional builder for the most part my entire career, from tract homes in different states to commercial high-rise construction, and now cabins out here in the Valley. I'm excited to be here, and me and my partner have slowly been immersing ourselves in the natural building culture, and I sure wish that when I was younger I could have, been exposed and could have learned a lot more about it. But we've been experimenting with clay finishes, bottle walls, different building systems, the science of materials, and we are slowly just trying to get ourselves up to speed with natural building. But I'm glad to be a part of this panel, And that's about it.
Thank you, Brett.
Hello, my name's Tim White. I have a company called Texas Healthy Homes, which is kind of becoming my brand, or the branding that I'm looking at with that system that has been a work in progress for about 30 years on how to incorporate natural building materials into something that can be made in the United States, and that we can get to a point that we can actually try to move the dial from $350 to $500 a square foot back down to $250 a square foot natural housing. Healthy housing really is where we're at. And so we're not there yet. I'm starting to see some hope again, which is great. There were some dark hours and years, actually decades inside of there. But what it really gets down to me over the years, and I try to figure out, where I started and where I am now, it was, if we use these historic, local, lime, clay, organic cellulose-based materials as our wall systems, we end up going in a direction where we just got rid of all of the toxins in the modern built environment, which I look at as the conventional building materials and system we have today. So really, when you start looking at alternative or natural, we really have to go back in time, grab the historic materials that were working back then, and bring them forward, and not then adulterate them with a bunch of petrochemicals and cements so that they can perform like they've performed for hundreds, if not thousands of years in some cases. And it's really not that hard. And when you get down to looking at it, it's like, holy cow, we just got rid of a wall system that had 15 different layers of different things that we had to go through, or 9 down to 3. And so you start to take the parts out of the equation. And one rule of thumb that I try to live by, because I've got a lot of science in me, is Occam's razor. And Occam's razor is the equation with the least amount of variables will always be the correct equation. And so over my career as a natural builder, historic builder, that's always been my goal. How do we get rid of the parts so that we can get back to the simplest equation, and then we can see where it goes from there?
Thank you, Tim. When I think about natural building, as it turns out, as a project moves along, it's like, wow, this is something really beautiful. And so that's something that always touched me over the years, that you're creating this thing that fits the client. That, then when Kirsten talks about her company out of the box, build outside of the box, exploring what's the right building material for a given client. And I think that's huge, because not everyone's a straw bale person, not everyone's a compressed earth block person. Each building material has a very specific feel, and so that feel each building material feels different to each client. And as an example, over the years, I may have built a straw bale, and I take a potential client through that straw bale, and they say, I love the way this feels, but it makes me uncomfortable that not all the insurance companies will insure it, so I won't build a straw bale. I'm like, but I want this feeling. What you're feeling is that building material. You're feeling the straw bale, right? And so that can't be duplicated in a stick frame home, or choosing the different building material. So I want to address the building material for each person on the panel. What's their favorite building material and why?
Well, okay. I mentioned earlier of all the projects I've done and worked with or educated myself on. I'm still a big fan of pumicecrete. There's been earlier, and one reason is that it's a regional resource. There's immense deposits of pumice down in the valley. The closest deposits are the red scoria, and the earliest buildings I know that I did here and others did were scoriacrete. Turns out that further south in the valley are other deposits that are easier to work with and a higher R value in the end result. The reason I like the stuff, it's fireproof, it's been through the fire, rot-proof, bug-proof, soundproof, structural. It's like everything you need, and it's a 1, 2, 3 process. I appreciate Tim eliminating the parts. Is like you put up forms, you pour in the material. Next day you take down the forms. You can any kind of cementatious finish, lime plaster, mud plaster, cement is still the most common. And anyway, so that's my favorite. But to address the larger picture, to bring it back to where I started my conversation, doing your own house, working directly with the contractor, if you're working with a contractor, putting your own artistic, creative, and love energy into the building is what a mentor of mine, Alexander Days, an English architect, wrote a book called Places of the Soul. He calls it ensouling the building. And it's simple as that. Put your own love into it. And can't get any more alternative than that.
Thank you, Michael.
Same question. Yeah, of course, I love Adobe. I love recycled textiles for insulation. We used a lot of that in France. Well, that's where I first started working with it, was in France. And all the other materials that you guys are already pretty familiar with. When I started with Earthships 20 years ago, Mike introduced the 6 principles, and the very first principle was building with natural and recycled materials. And I gravitated to the recycled material side of things. So, of course, tires, I just loved it. I fell in love with it. I thought it was the greatest, yeah. So I had a tattoo. It was like my 5th anniversary. It's the first time I put ink on my skin. So it had to be a tire with a sledgehammer, of course. So, it's hard for me to deviate from that commitment. The thing that has changed, though, is I used to be a snob. I had to, handpick each and every tire. I would pull the sidewall up. I'd check to see if it was sitting in the sun long enough that I could beat it into submission. And then, as you get older and you slow down a little more, the reason why I still love tires, even though there's always this, what about the off-gassing run? What about the environmental impact in terms of air quality and all that stuff? We've already gone through that for decades. I've done air quality tests, all these things, found out that they're much better than any conventional stick frame piece of crap in terms of health and air quality. We've done all that. But one of the biggest challenges was when somebody would just bring a truckload of whatever, we were like, hey man, we can't take 80% of what's on your truck. We would take from 205 to 235, 245, that range of size. Now I'm like, just bring everything. Just spill them on the ground. We'll sort out what's poundable, and the rest we bail. And if they're the lorry tires, we do the outlaw septic tanks with them. We had to do that in several countries around the world where you couldn't get a concrete septic tank on the side of a mountain. And I know all about it because for 14 years we've lived at 8,200 feet on a 45, 50-degree slope. So, I don't think that I'm the guy who's going to get sold on anything else. I don't think you can do it.
Why, Ron?
Because I'm all about getting it now, getting it done. I don't need hours and hours of curing time. I don't want to source materials that are specific to New Mexico, Colorado, wherever. Tires are indigenous on the planet everywhere. If you can't find them, jump in the ocean and pull a couple million more out. I never, ever worry about having work. I don't worry about having an unlimited building supply material. Of course, Adobe and other things are, right there. When I'm already excavating, I'm already tabletopping the site with the machines. I'm generating all my materials. Straws, all these things are easy to get. It's not difficult. The biggest challenge, like I said earlier, is just getting CID getting NMED, all these like major officials to just get off my back and let me do what we all know is the right thing to do. Just let the public bring me the tires. Don't write them a citation because they didn't take it to the landfill. Like, clear those boundaries and let me show what we can do, what's amazing. I'm looking at what these guys are trying to do with this not a visitor center, it's a community center. And where I live, I bought a lot of land in the reclamation gravel pit project area. I was really inspired by reclaiming scarred land. I really loved it. And when I bought into the Earthship community, I thought it was a community. I thought we had like-minded people that were really like pushing, the idea of being like independent of everything, right? And it's been as far from that as you can imagine. So like when you're looking at like what Crestone wants to do, I want to see that happen at the Greater World Earthship community. Like it should have happened years ago, 30 years ago when we started this journey. And I know that driving the cost down with, building a community center out of tire bales. Like I said, 2 of my military veterans and I can make 3 to 4 bales an hour. So, I would need an army of people to build a community center the size of what you guys really want out here. But with a couple balers and some inspired, you don't even have to be that strong. You're lifting tires into a baler. But to watch that level of productivity, that's what inspires me. Like, I need to see things materialize instantly. I need instant gratification like most people do.
So you're the tire guy, Ron.
I'm the guy that actually can see things get built on a large scale for people that are desperate now. Like, they need a home now, not the 8-year program, 10-year program, the cost out analysis. Because of my business background, I'm like, well, a bag of Portland was $4.50 when my wife started construction. And now I'm at $25 a bag. So when people come to me and talk to me about square foot rates, and we're talking about like, hey, how much is it going to cost to get this family into their home, I can tell you what that is. I know what that price is because I know I'm going to get you in your house in 3 months. I'm not unrealistic about 3D printing and being in a home in a month.
We're going to drill down on costs in a minute as
okay.
well.
I'd like to get involved in that. Okay. So thanks again, guys.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate it.
Ron. So, as Tim was saying, how we live now in these conventional boxes is beyond toxic. Like, you cannot imagine, in all these layers that he mentioned that go into a regular stick frame building, there are petrochemicals, there are things that are off-gassing, there's alkali materials, there's formaldehyde. Like, you cannot believe what is in these materials. And then when buildings like that catch on fire, guess what? You have those toxins in the air and water and the surrounding environment, in the soil for years. And so I would hope that we start to put as much consideration into the health of the buildings we live in as we do into the health of the food that we put in our bodies. And I would say, like, if you wouldn't put a Twinkie in your body, why would you live in one? So let's not live inside, something made out of words we can't even pronounce. So everything I love, all the materials I love, is the entire group of earthen building materials, from cob to poured adobe blocks, rammed earth tires, anything made with clay and earth and soil. It's non-toxic, locally available, affordable, accessible, easy to build with, makes a healthy living environment. It's sculptural. People love the feel of it. You can dive into you can bathe in mud and come out and feel amazing. It's fantastic. It's not like getting something that spews out of a tube or getting a bunch of concrete splashing into your eye. Like, mud is good for you. It's good for your soul. It's good for your body. It's good in every way. So I'm a fan of everything about mud. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kirsten.
Well, Tim, this is kind of a toss-up for me because I'm a carpenter, and so I love wood. And so when you go through the forest and you look at the mountains, like wood it's every piece of wood is different. But I'm not going to pick wood. I'm going to pick clay because we're new to working with clay, me and my partner, and we're building a house right now, and we had Athena Steen come out to our place back in May, and we did an experiment. We've been criticized because we live in the dirt, and our valley is not the prettiest thing, but I think it's quite incredible. So one of our walls in our house is the dirt from our land. And so we dug down, we took the clay, we soaked it, we screened it, and we took that clay and just used straw, and that's our wall. So after experimenting with clay, I think clay is one of the funnest materials to work with. Yes, it can be structural, through Adobe methods or different methods. You can earth bag it, but I think from a finish standpoint, I think clay is incredible because it's natural.
Is it just a feeling? Why do you say that?
Our house is a combination of different elements. We have one wall that's sand and wheat paste, and it looks like wet sand. But we've got a lot of T&G, tongue and groove wood. We have aspen, and we have Doug fir, and we have pine, and we have beetle kill. So when you walk into a house that has clay and wood, without chemicals, we're not putting polyurethane on our tongue and groove. We're putting beeswax and linseed oil. But the combination of the two creates a feeling, an energy. And when you contrast that with drywall and paint, it doesn't have the same energy at all. It's almost like it's a mask. It's not quite the same at all. But when you walk in a house with natural finishes, there's something very different about that feeling. It feels like you're at home, and it feels like you're in a different world. It feels like you're outside in a way.
It feels different.
It feels different, very much so. So, for me, I think the natural elements that are right under our feet, not this carpet, but, when we ground ourselves in the earth, that feeling, that dirt, if we can bring that into our houses, I think that is probably one of the best, materials that I want to work with.
Thank you, Brett.
Adam, that's a loaded question.
I know, right?
Yeah. And because I'm around the country a lot, I get asked that question a lot. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like,
It always depends, right, Tim?
spotlight, yeah. So, like I warned you earlier, y'all, I was kind of a science geek on this, all right? So what we're getting with the clay material is that clay carries a negative ionic charge. Anybody know how good negative ions are for your body? Raise your hand. If you don't know, go talk to somebody that their hand is up, okay? But for me, I don't care what it's doing to your body. That negative ionic charge of that clay platelet is able to interact with water vapor in the built environment, the thermal energy of steam. So when you live in your built environment, you take showers, you sweat, you cook, well, you're adding more thermal energy of water vapor into that built environment. The clay is able to grab a hold of that and pull it into the wall and hold it there and not let it radiate that heat back out. So for interior finishes, I only do clay. I turned down a lime project down in Santa Fe the other day. Really high-end house, $18, $20 a square foot, lime plaster job. I said, no, I just do clay on the inside because of that one reason. Then as you go from interior to exterior, I like a clay finish. I like a lime base coat that's over some sort of cellulose-based wall material, wood, cellulose-based material, hemp. They've got a gazillion little micropores inside of it that are really good for moving water vapor and holding water vapor and then pulling it through the wall system. And then on the exterior, it's a 3-coat historic lime plaster system that we do with 7 coats of lime wash. Your last 2 coats are your color coat, but that's your maintenance for the rest of the life of the building. And with those 3 basic assemblies for the wall system, there are buildings in Europe that are thousands of years old. You go back to clay and rock, go out to the ancient Puebloan people, okay? So for me, that's the perfect wall system. And over the years and the science that I've done with it, I've gotten to the point over the years of, no, if it's not clay inside on the walls, Tim White's not going to be a part of the project. Okay, simple as that. They usually end up going with clay. And then the one thing that has really been a driving point for me over the last 5-6 years is really getting the books and studying what happens when we get rid of rebar and concrete in our built environment on our concrete slab, and we go to an adobe floor. And so there's a book out there called Living Spaces. You can get it from Germany. It goes over the different carbon footprint, mainly in British thermal units of energy. And then we were able to take 8,000 pounds of concrete or 8,000 pounds of a floor and replace it and put it into an equation from what they had calculated for adobe material, our cob for the earthen floor, and reinforced concrete and steel. We took 7.5 million British thermal units of energy out of the built environment, but just by going from a reinforced concrete and steel floor to an earthen adobe floor.
Earthen adobe floors are absolutely beautiful, one of my favorite floors. What would you say one of the biggest challenges to an adobe floor? When I say challenged, a challenge to where this floor can be reproduced across the world, not just Tim White on that floor.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the challenge to having an adobe floor reproducible?
$200 million.
Why do you say that?
Well, you got to make it a product, and you got to put it into a system, and then you got to do the testing for what they want, and then you have to have your parameters that are ran through the engineers on what that substrate's going to be in Appalachia, what's that substrate going to be in Florida, what's going to be that substrate in Rocky Mountains, what's that substrate going to be in different areas, and to get it into a uniform product. That's why steel and petrochemicals and the EFIS systems are really good, because you can just plug them into any environment, and the concrete and the synthetics going to perform for a period of time and then do their thing. But yeah, when you start to go about that systems approach, I mean, don't 2025, y'all. We're going to create a whole new product line on healthy spaces that used to exist, and we're going to do a training program with it. First off, we got to get it into the education system so that the architects that are designing and speccing the materials literally understand the material and why they're speccing it. That is not happening at all today around the country. Okay, that's the first hurdle. I mean, you could spend $50 million just doing education at the universities. But that's kind of the first, because everybody goes to, when you go to build a house, you go find an architect, and then you get a design. And then the architect sends that off to an engineer, and the engineer throws a bunch of engineering at it, and then they're like, oh, we're going to get Brett to build our house. And then Brett ends up with a set of plans. He's like, how in my world am I going to get bales in there? Or, Ron, how in the world am I going to get tires into this thing? You know, and so it's really that educational aspect at the institutions of higher education.
That's a good segue right now, Tim, in the design aspect. And so Michael being an incredible architect here, I want him to give us a 3 or 4 minute take, which I know that's a short amount of time, on how you approach architecture. Meaning, I'm your client. I come into your office and I say, Michael, I've got a piece of land here in Crestone. I want to build on. I want X number of square feet. You take that over. What is your approach? What questions are you asking me when I come in not knowing the right questions to ask, potentially?
Well, first off, first stage would be what I call program development. Is how many bedrooms, how big a space, do you entertain, do you need a big kitchen? What are the physical parameters that you need in your living space, giving concern to possible future growth. The second, so that's the first primary, what are the client's needs? The second thing I do is I listen to the land and try and get an understanding of what the land needs. And the object here is to oblige both of those in a harmonious fashion. sum up enough?
Yeah, and some of your designs are, it's are harmonic. However you want to characterize them, they're laid out with, do you have Fibonacci sequence? I forget, Michael. But elaborate a little bit on that, how you approach it, because you have some super unique designs that.
Well, Fibonacci numbers are really the base of the whole premise of sacred architecture and geometry. Golden means, Fibonacci came over a couple of thousand years after people understood what the golden means ratio meant. It's the proportions of our body. It's flowers, seed pods, everything in nature has relative pertinence to the golden means, including the placement of planets around the sun. So it's extensive. It's everywhere in nature. So the idea is to integrate those numbers into your design. It's quite that simple. There are different scales that you can develop that are based on a progression of harmonic progression of numbers, which are basically Fibonacci numbers. When you do that and put that into the space, you can feel it. It is definitely something, and you don't have to be that sensitive, but people feel it. They may not even know what they're feeling, but it feels good.
Wonderful, thank you, Michael. So I want to talk about, this is one of the bigger topics. When a client comes to one of us, a potential client, and says, I want to build a house, 1,500 square feet. Maybe I know the building type or maybe I don't. What's the first question they ask? How much is it a square foot?
Yeah.
So, with natural building, one of the biggest challenges that I've faced over the years, it's controlling labor cost. Because if you take something that's not standardized, this is the example. An electrician walks up to a conventionally framed home. They lay out the electrical. They drill all the studs. They pull all the wire. They do this day in, day out. Now take that to the plumber, to every trade throughout a home. As soon as it's not that it's something difficult for an electrician to do when they walk up to an Adobe house, and now they have to wire the Adobe house. It's just more labor, right? So controlling labor cost is one of the most challenging issues I've found over the years with a natural building home. So I want to start off with Ron. How do we approach natural building and have it become affordable for people? Or when I say affordable, that's even a relative term, right? A square foot price for me, that's affordable for me, may be different than Stephen out in the audience, right? Stephen would want a house that's 5 times the cost of mine. I'm just kidding. No, so how do we make natural building more affordable?
Actually, I don't know if this is a question for me as much as it is for Kirsten. So I'm going to pass to Mike. I want you guys to hear her explanation of this.
I think talking about dollar per square foot is the most toxic conversation that you can possibly have around building a building. Because what it means for most builders is build the largest space possible for the cheapest materials to make the most amount of profit. And I think we need to start moving, and this is from Josh Cranoff of Firewall USA, moving the conversation from dollar per square foot to value per square foot. So what's the value of a building that is built with natural, non-toxic materials? What's the value of a building that harvests and treats its own water? What's the value of a building that has renewable energy systems and will function when the grid fails? What's the value of a building? Thank you. What's the value? Yeah. What's the value of a building that is going to take care of you for now and for future generations? What's the value of a building that gives back to the earth instead of just taking from it? What's the value of a building that is not going to burn down in a fire? What's the value of a building that's a spiritual shelter for you and your neighbors? So I think it's about changing the perception and the whole conversation. Like, when we worked at Earthship, all the time people were like, well, how much does this cost compared to a conventional house? And I'm like, you cannot compare the cost per square foot of this building to that of a conventional house. The first night we got up here to Crestone, and I've lived off the grid for 31 years, making my own solar power, collecting my own water, filtering my own water, everything, treating my own sewage. And we came up here, we got a beautiful Airbnb, probably $1 million house, beautiful views, radiant floors, super comfortable, stunning, stunning house. And we were within the house in, 15 minutes after we got there, the power grid failed. For like more than an hour, we were completely in the dark, using the light of our cell phones to kind of figure our way around, not knowing if we could flush the toilet, worried about the food that we just put in the refrigerator, if it's, is it going to be off all night? Is it going to spoil? Or frozen organic berries going to melt? And even a multi-million-dollar house, if it is not relating to, connecting to its environment, getting everything it needs from within its environment, is worth absolutely nothing when the grid goes down. Your pipes can freeze. You can die of heat stroke. You are in a vulnerable situation, not just the extremes, but the sheer inconvenience of suddenly being without the things that you need. So value per square foot to me means that you have a home that is a machine for living, that you've invested in something that's going to take care of you, no utility bills for now and into the future.
So give me a 2-minute filter. If I come to your company and I say I have $400,000 to spend, I want to live in a natural home, what's your response to me?
Do you want to have off-grid systems in your home? That's the first determining question.
I want it all.
Okay, so
And I want it to be 5,000 square feet.
So that immediately, to me, with conventional building, because you have the life support of the grid and the heating and the cooling, you can build any shape you want. You can build, a house to look like a cowboy boot. You can build, a mountain chalet in the desert. But it's not necessarily the most efficient, affordable structure to maintain in that. So with the way that we build, the performance takes precedence. So if you want to have water harvesting, if you want to have a building that's going to heat and cool itself without utility bills, if you want a building that has total off-grid energy systems, it's not going to look like a conventional house. So I would say, okay, you have this amount of money to spend. We can talk about, what that might cost for materials, but you're going to have to alter your concept of the design. It's not going to look like a conventional house. Like the first thing I would think of is water harvesting. So I wouldn't necessarily do the floor plan until I would design the roof. What is the cleanest surface to catch water off of? What does this pitch need to be? Where are the cisterns going to be? Are they going to be above ground? Are they going to be below ground? Is the inlet from the cistern into the house going to gravity feed the pump? Like, where does the final drop of water go? Where does the gray water planter go? Where does the septic? There's just a lot more to I want, arched doorway or, a nook, a breakfast nook. It's truly about how it's going to perform. And then the beauty evolves after that. You can't force aesthetic elements into the function of a building. And, Mike Reynolds said when people complained how his buildings looked kind of industrial on the outside or earth bermed, he would say, if you're on the Titanic and it's sinking, what do you care what color your lifeboat is? And so I'm not saying that you have to live in a totally utilitarian building. It can be beautiful too, but the performance and how it interacts with the natural environment. And I don't even know if I'm answering your question now, but okay.
Good.
Yeah, that is the primary consideration, is how it's going to function.
Great. Thank you, Kirsten.
What was your question, Adam?
Affordability. How do we make natural building more affordable?
You know, that's a conversation that I've been having this weekend with a lot of people, because the value that you would discuss is it's a great concept, and I appreciate that, because being in a natural house, there is a huge amount of value in that. But affordability definitely is it's a paradigm that all of us are facing. Not all of us have deep pockets or endless supplies of money or tons of income. A lot of us are very conscious about what we're putting into our house cost wise. And so I don't fully have the answer of how do we keep costs down with this. Going small definitely is, in
Great
suburban,
point. The
suburban
size.
America, it's people live in big houses. 50, 100 years ago, houses were very, very, very small. And I think we've grown too big with what we want in life. We want 5 bedrooms. A lot of people want 5 bedrooms. They want 5 bathrooms. They want a basement. They want a 5-car garage. They want everything under the sun. And what more do we need than just a dance floor, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a bedroom? So we really don't need a lot with design. Um, for me and Lisa, the first thing we built was a workshop. Because as a builder, it's like, I
Nice.
need a place for tools.
Yeah, totally.
I need a place for materials. For us to build this house, we've got to have a place for our stuff. But I think affordability, we really need to focus on the systems and the science of materials, and just look at what's important for our needs. But me and Tim, we're going to have more discussions about this later today. And when we invite anybody to the table, but we want to talk about profit that contractors are making. We want to talk about the expectation the homeowners have with warranties. We want to talk about finishes that might have to be recoated a year or two later because of erosion. There's different parts and pieces that we want to figure out and change the game with how we build and what we're using, because there's too many chemicals being used every day in all of our systems. You look at standard OSB, there is a ton of glues in OSB, and it doesn't go away. There's a lot of customers I've had that want no VOCs or low VOCs, and they go down that rabbit hole only to end up with a toxic house. So we have to go more of a natural model and look at every component, but we've also got to be very conscious of our inputs and our costs and where it comes from. So I think it's a debate. It's a question we still got to dig into and research and put our heads together, because we've got to change the model. Right now, houses are too expensive across the board. Cities all over the country. You can go to Utah or Idaho or different parts of Colorado, and the base model house is $500,000.
Yeah, it's an affordable housing crisis, no question.
It's a major crisis. And there's a lot of builders out here that still think that the 350 square foot is the price. Why can't it be 150? Why can't it be 250 square foot? What can we do to bring this down and work with what we have?
Thank you, Brett. Affordability, Tim.
Yeah, in holistic building, right? Because that's
Yes,
actually what
definitely.
we're
Yes,
talking about at the
that's
end
what
of the day.
we're talking about.
I mean, at the end of the day, just cut the fat off of it, and it's a great T-bone, but it's holistic, living in harmony with our resources that we have. One thing, Brett, that you forgot to mention about the modern house is she wants her walk-in closet. Bigger than the bathroom, yeah. And so those are, the design aspects that make it tricky. One thing that I've been fortunate to experience throughout my natural building career is I've been able to experience the situations on the end of the day where, man, you've beat your body to death. Okay? I mean, as far as labor, intense building. But I've also had the experience of doing the exact same thing that I beat my body to the end of its, exhaustion on an adobe floor, to fast forward 20 years from there to where I had incorporated different hydraulics in a different system to where we weren't even tired at the end of the day, you know? So it can be labor and time intensive. It does not need to be physically brutal.
So innovation, is that what you're?
It's just looking
Getting
at the
to here.
materials and the proper place to do them, and what do you incorporate to reduce that wear and tear on the bodies. And then another thing for me, in the companies that I've run doing ground up construction with the employees and everything that goes with it, is part of the affordability problem is also being willing to be a moral human being and pay a living wage. Okay? So when you get into cost, that's a big part of cost and affordable.
Definitely.
You know, down in Texas.
So not only have materials gone up, the cost of living, and so all the labor has gone up. So as these houses increase in price, one aspect that I don't think is a negative, but it increases the cost of the house, is, you know, a carpenter's earning a living wage. We have the trades coming through that are actually earning a living wage, right?
Yeah,
And so
that ain't happening in Texas. It's not happening on the Front Range. And then one more thing, all you Crestonians out there with this housing crisis in Colorado, I've been all over the country. You are not special. New Jersey has a housing crisis. Washington State has a housing crisis. California, Wisconsin, Texas, everywhere across the country. So I wanted to bring that up because now you're not in it alone. Every American is in that same situation.
So give me the
We
nuts
all-
and bolts, affordability, Tim. How are we reducing the cost of these houses?
Well, we're, building single wides every day. You know, that's how we're doing it right now. You know, so how do we get moving away from that? Well, it all gets down to building codes, building codes, building codes. Well, that's great. Let's have some regulation around health and safety with the built environment and the materials being used in the built environment. There is no regulation on the 10 to 20,000 nasty toxins that are in your house at all today on what they do to the human body. Zero. There are a little bit of warning labels and some products and stuff like that. But once we start to look at that, then we're going to have the opportunity to get more use of these natural materials into the marketplace, which will then create diversity in different products, and hopefully in free market capitalism, that will bring the cost down. But we're in free market capitalism here, y'all, you know, no matter whether or not we like it or not. But that's the world that when you start to go after doing multiple houses to try to create the training program so that we can get more efficient and more timely in the construction process. Brett and I were talking about that, you know. If it's a 2,400 square foot house, I got a year to build that. But if I've got a 1,300 to 1,500 square foot house to build as a natural house, my timeline is 6 months, because that's where the marketplace is today. They would like 4, you know, because they're on construction loans that all have their own interest rate to them that they're trying to roll into a mortgage. And so it's like making it affordable. Part of that is making it into a system that can be reproduced easily, so that then we can get reproduction in the materials and the people doing the work, so that we can shorten our timeline of the learning experience with it. The modern construction industry, they got that worked out. They got their 4x8 sheets, and they got their systems, and they got their products, and they got their Home Depot, they got their Lowe's, they got their Ace Hardware, you know. So those are the really big challenges that I see in the marketplace.
Thank you, Tim. Michael, you take this question. Affordability.
Well, I totally agree with everything that's been said here. The product, the beauty of it is essential. It's worth a lot more than what it is supposed to cost. It has value way beyond the cost. But the only reason I wanted to address it is right now I just finished pouring pumice on a 4,000 square foot house, that's about 1,000 plus square feet of a garage and ADU unit, so 2,600 square foot house, where the builder was just learning how to do the system, and when it was all said and done, he said, cost-wise, it was comparable to a stick frame house and 10 times the product. So I don't think all of you agree that pumice is an organic material, but it is. And when you put a clay finish on it or a lime plaster on it, that's what you're facing for your interior. That's what you're exposed to. Anyway, that's another reason why I like it so much, and enough said about it.
No, great, Michael. Thank you. We've got 13 minutes left, and so I want to turn this over to some audience questions. And so, yeah, this lady over here would like to talk. Maybe I can get the microphone to you.
Yeah, so a part of the housing issue, oh, that's what. I know where I was living in the mountains in California, they started limiting the amount of people that could Airbnb their house. Because in Tahoe and the surrounding areas, there were people buying up property and turning them into Airbnbs, and then there wasn't enough housing for the local people. So local governments stepped in and they limit how many people can have an Airbnb. And that's part of the issue, is that there's a growing number of landlords and people renting their properties out as vacation rentals, which, it's fine, but in the old days, you had a house because you lived in it and you only owned one house. Now there's people that own multiple houses, which makes it so that there's a lot of people that can't have a house. So that's one issue that I see.
Does anybody want to address that? So is there a question?
Yeah, like, are you doing anything to kind of mitigate that? Or, like, if you're building communities, are you only allowing people to own so much? Or is there any thought going into that?
Yeah, honestly, and I definitely respect that is an issue nationwide, probably outside of the scope of the alternative building panel, unless somebody specifically wants to address that. Okay, great.
Thank you. So that's a specific issue that's like you mentioned, it's in a lot of areas. It's happening in Taos right now. The Airbnb thing was kind of unexpected and then took over Taos pretty quickly. And it got kind of blamed for the affordable housing crisis. But in Taos, there were many other factors that were also already going on. Lack of housing in general, many people moving to the area wanting long-term rentals, lack of affordable options, building codes making things more expensive for people. So it's part of it, but it's part of a larger picture. And relative to Airbnb and the natural housing movement, like in Taos, there's a lot of Airbnbs that are natural and alternative homes. It's where people come to live and experience and get people turned on to these different ways of building, but there definitely has to be some regulation and a balance. So Taos is about to cut down its total number of short-term rentals by 50%. And it's going to be highly regulated, and they're hoping that's going to help. We'll see if it's going to help, but empowering more owner builders, making financing more available for people, providing green loans, providing accessible insurance for alternative homes, because sometimes it can be more difficult to get. I think those are things that are a big part of the picture as well.
Great, thank you, Kirsten.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a question for Ron, please. You mentioned about the lack of toxicity in the tire material. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, since they're made out of petrochemicals? I can't even walk into a tire store.
Right.
So tell me what happens and how they become building materials that aren't toxic.
Right. So in the beginning of my career, my own mother was like, "Honey, you can't live in those houses. You're gonna die." And you're right. You walk into a tire store or Costco, and you walk into that tire section. That's all you're smelling is that petroleum, that off gassing. I've been living in airships for 20 years. Basically, I became an intern, and I wanted to live in the space that I was going to learn from. And when that topic kept coming up because I worked at the visitor center volunteering 1 day a week, and the same question kept coming over and over. And generally, when you have the three elements that are attacking a petroleum product, they are the sun, they're the wind, and it's the water. All three of those break down petroleum products. Now, we did testing on tires, and we determined, through, kind of a wind tunnel process to accelerate the time that Mother Nature could break down that petroleum product. If a tire is just sitting out there in the sun, we figured it would take about 2,000 years to fully take it back to the earth. That's how intense that building product is. So when Mike Reynolds just started filling them with earth, pounding them to 95% compaction, and then entombing them from the back with the burial. And then a lot of people wanted me to add sort of like a vapor barrier to the front of the tire wall. Well, you don't want to do that because you want the wall to charge. It's a thermal battery. So by separating that tire from the solar gain and with using the laws of physics and thermodynamics from the floors and the walls to charge the entire space, you couldn't have that barrier. So what we decided to do was to pack it out with Adobe and continue to shape it out to the point where we had enough clay, natural Adobe, on the wall. And then we still were concerned. We were still concerned, like, is there a possibility that even something that would take 2,000 years to break down is just sitting fully exposed? So then that's when we started incorporating the convection air systems. We started adding these cooling tubes, and they're nothing more than a 10-inch culvert. And we put them in the berm behind the building. And then, we've always had the skylights, transoms. So the way to truly have a healthy home is to have good airflow, natural airflow, right? You want to have a whole air exchange system passively. And so any concern that we may have had, plus we had a radon concern, just like they have here in Colorado. So we do all these radon tests. Every time we go to sell an airship, we had to do a radon test. And if the numbers were over 4, we had to find ways of mitigating the radon concern. So going back and trying to do that system by drilling holes in the floor and piping them out to the outside to siphon the radon out from under the building and up and out, it was no longer a concern about petroleum. It was no longer a concern about tires off-gassing. It was now these other concerns, these other environmental concerns. So now every time I build a new building, we have to put these radon systems underneath the building before we even start pounding tires, before we even start setting the floor, forms and all those things. So, I like to think I'm a pretty normal guy. I'm a little hyper, a little, too much type A, I guess. But I've lived in these for 20 years. We own multiple designs. I've built every design. I can tell you firsthand that I have a very clear, I've talked to people in different houses they've lived in. It's like, what's your quality of life? Like, how are you? How's your memory? All these things kind of tied into why I know that this actually does work. And I'm here to tell you firsthand, I'm walking the walk. I'm not talking to talk you into something that I know, just like in the conventional construction world, I know that's not good for you. But I know this is good for you. So that's from my firsthand experience. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Ron.
Hey, thanks. Earlier, you all were mentioning about cost competitiveness. So this goes out to Adam and other local contractors initially. Do you think Crestone could accept a consortium to bring in 3D concrete printing initially that's toxic, but we can work towards different feedstocks, and I'm curious to be part of that. Using additive manufacturing as a way to cut costs. Thanks.
Brett and I were talking about that earlier as well. Tim, did you want to? You're pointing at me, but as far as technology is what I'm hearing the question as is, so 3D printing, is that what is that what you heard? You get one of you guys want to take this?
So I live in Hill Country, Texas, and over in Austin, Texas, they're just like raving about this 3D printing and how great it is, and this, that, and the other thing. And they're doing a little community. It's great. 1,200 square foot house, 1 bedroom, little studio startup. To make their budget work is $750,000 a house. Yeah, that's their selling price for them. Yeah, okay, so right up the road, Buena Vista, $600,000 a house. Okay, so hold it. Time out. Is technology going to solve us? You heard me. Our past, our future is in our past. Why are we going to, you do not want to look at buying one of those 3D printing machines. They are like spendy. And then you got to set it up, and so it's like, great, now we've got this machine and we have a labor problem in our community because our people can't get paying jobs, and so now the machine's going to take the job, and so here you can go, be a laborer for $15 an hour because, that's what the marketplace is, type of a thing. So don't think that technology is going to save us. As far as 3D printing in some of the natural binders that I've been looking at for the lime that I use, one of them comes from a pozzolanic company out of Pennsylvania, and they do a lot of work with 3D printing. And when that engineer and I were having a conversation on the phone, we both got really excited because he's like, holy cow, you're using it to make Roman concrete. And I was like, yeah, dude, that's what I'm wanting to know. And so the 3D printing question got brought up, and I was like, oh, are you doing a lot of pozzolans and different stuff? And he goes, yeah, we're working with all the 3D printer companies that are out there that are making it for their formulas. And I go, I have one question for you, and you just have to say yes or no. Are they adding a bunch of different petrochemical-based binders to get the flow? And he said, I can't tell you what they are, but the answer is yes. Okay, so now we're trying to make a system on technology, and we're throwing more petrochemicals at it, and we are like, oh, this is going to be affordable housing, and we're selling 1,200 square foot houses for $600,000 to $700,000, and the young people living in them are excited. They're technology people. They're like, this is the future, but I don't have any friends that can afford a $750,000 house, at the end of the day. So, you do?
No, I don't. I was pointing at Eric.
Great question, by the way, though. Great question.
But we're going to
Wrap up real quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 2:15 now. Kim, can we do one more question here? Okay, where are we? Eric, okay.
All right, right here.
Right on.
Crashing the panel for a second. So, nurturing resilience. We talked a lot about homes. We're talking about individuals, owner builders, the independent journey towards sovereignty and freedom, Airbnbs. We did mention the community center briefly. Ron touched upon this idea. I think overall what we've talked about here is the cost barrier. The cost barrier to getting into your own home. But community infrastructure that's built in this way could be a massive place for sanctuary for people to experience this firsthand in this community. So that's what came up for me when it came to nurturing resilience, the idea that this is a sanctuary. We touched upon it, each person touched upon this idea that it's a quality, it's not a cost concern. And we keep talking about, but what about our house, our house, our house? Let me see some massive, independent, self-sufficient community infrastructure. That's resilience. That's community resilience. Go and see it, live inside it for the time that you're there. Not anybody is, be there when you're there. Experience it. The home tours are great because you get to go and experience the homes. One of my challenges has been trying to get people to understand what it's like being in an Earthship. So that's why Ron has underneath his chair a small paper model Earthship. This event is free. I appreciate all the sponsors. Give it up for Tree, give it up for Nick Navarez, give it up for Brett, give it up for Lisa, Anya, all the team members here at the Crescent Energy Fair have done a great job. It's a free event, and I have some free giveaways for you over at the Build Outside the Box booth. If you want to go, we have Earthship 101 guides. We have paper model Earthship buildables. I wanted to give something away to everybody who's really interested in self-sufficient architecture. Come visit us. You can talk with me, Ron, Kirsten over at the Build Outside the Box booth after the panel. And then stay tuned for the next panel where we're going to have all the masterminds, and Kim is going to give them an awesome introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Great, thank you. We're out of time. We could talk 8 hours on this topic and still be short of time. But
Hey, I just wanted to say the question about the Airbnb short-term rental, and you guys might have thought about this, but we could maybe, even with our counties, round up what we're known for, like Taos and here, and say we're going to really promote the natural building as part of the short-term rental and have people have that experience. Like at my retreat center, it's straw bale, adobe, you know what I mean? And people will have that experience, like Eric was saying, to really have them feel the difference, because it's massive, right?
yeah, definitely.
It's really massive. So thank you.
You're welcome. And FYI, Saguache County is implementing short-term rental regulations soon, and so it's not if, it's happening. And so yeah, it is a. So thank each and every one of our panelists for being up here and sharing their expertise today, and appreciate everyone out in the audience for coming here and listening. And so, thank you very much.